Today we're going to discuss about advantages of traveling in advance parole. And when you travel on advance parole, do you still maintain the non-immigrant visa status, especially H-1B and L1 and L2 and H-4? These are the only 4 non-immigrant visas we're going to address. Now, Rebecca, now the visa appointments are taking a long time to get it. They are not available until 2024, and now a lot of people have advance parole. We're speaking only employment-based advance parole, those people who have non-immigrant visas, H1, H4, L1, L2. What's the advantage of traveling in advance parole?
Yeah, traveling using the advance parole is much easier than going for H stamping or L stamping due to the long wait times at the consulates. Also, renewing an advance parole is much easier, much cheaper than getting your employer to file for your H1 or L1 extension. There are no filing fees related to the I-131 application, which is what you use to file the advance parole renewal. You just need to make sure you file it early enough. We usually recommend filing 180 days before it expires. And just making sure it's always valid when you're traveling.
The main focus here is, Rebecca, for me is that I don't want to be in adjustment of status. There's always rumors saying, nightmares coming to me that what happens if my adjustment of status get denied? Will I be completely leave the country though? So when I'm traveling in advance parole though, does it mean that my H-1B is gone or is it still existing?
So it's not entirely clear. We do know from an old INS memo, this was from like 20 years ago before I think USCIS was even USCIS, but an old memo that says that if you have a pending I-485 application and you depart the US in valid H or L status and you use the advance parole to come back into the US at a time when your I-797 approval notice is not expired, then if the petitioner files for your H extension or L extension, that can be approved and essentially puts you back in non-immigrant status.
So for example, Rebecca, I have my H-1B expiring in 2024. Now I travel in October of 2022. I come back. I can extend the H-1B with current company?
Yes, so that petitioner can file for the extension.
Can I transfer to a different company?
Yes.
Can I transfer to H-4 EAD, for example?
Yes, you can file a change of status.
What if I was on H4 visa and then an H-4 EAD, for example, and I travel outside the country, I come back, can I extend the H-4 also, H-4 EAD also?
Yes, as long as, like we said, the original I-797 or the original I-94 for the non-immigrant status is not expired at the time you're coming back into the U.S. with the advance parole.
We had no problems in extending the H-1Bs and H-4s after people have traveled on advance parole. Never had any problem at all. Now, can I transfer to a different company? Let's say I'm working for company A, I travel on advance parole, I have an adjustment of status pending. Can I move to a different company and still file the H-1B transfer? Because of some of the bigger companies, they don't take us an EAD. They want us to be an H-1B. Can I transfer the H-1B?
Yes, that's fine. Also, as long as your I-797 with your current company, company A, is still valid, you can have an H-1B transfer filed for you.
What if I am an EB-3 category and I came back in advance parole? Can I interfile and move to EB-2 even if I traveled in advance parole?
Yes. So now that we have kind of a clear procedure for how to transfer the underlying basis of a pending I-485 application, which is filing the I-485J supplement, and USCIS seems to have a pretty good system for transferring that basis with the electronic scanning and all of that. If you use the advance parole that you received that was from an I-485 filed in the EB-3 category, you're not locked into EB-3 forever just by using that advance parole. That I-485, the underlying basis, can be transferred still to EB-2 by having a J supplement filed for you now or at some point in the future. We're not necessarily recommending that people transfer the underlying basis right now because, as we know, for kind of these upcoming months, the priority dates are pretty close between EB3 and EB2, but if at some point one goes farther ahead, you could always still transfer, even if you have used your advance parole.
One more thing, Rebecca, when I travel an advance parole though, the I-94 says that it's expiring in 1 year. Let's say, for example, I come back in October of 2022. The I-94 says that since advance parole is only, it's only valid for, they only give one year I-94, but my H-1B I-797 is expiring in 2024 instead of 2023. Does it mean that I can only stay until October of 2023? Does it mean that I have to file an extension before October of 2023?
No, it doesn't. And we understand how that can be confusing because we have emphasized over and over, always check your I-94 after you re-enter the U.S. and that most recent I-94 is what controls your status, which is normally true for any non-immigrant status. But when you're using an advance parole to come in, CBP just puts that duration on the I-94 according to the advance parole. A lot of times it's 1 year. In that situation, it does not mean that you need to somehow extend that I-94 that's notated with DE. You don't need to extend it before that 1 year is up. It doesn't mean that if you stay past that I-94 end date that you are out of status. Basically, when you come into the U.S., using advance parole, as long as your I-485 remains pending, then you are in a period of authorized stay. And then, as we've been saying, if your H-1B I-94 is still valid, for example, you can still have that extended, transferred, status changed by having another petition or application filed.
Rebecca, what if I have given up H-1B and H-4? I am using the EAD in advance parole, and I have traveled out to India and coming back, and now my I-94 expires in September of 2023 because I entered into September of 2022. It normally expires in 1 year, and I don't have the H-1B validity. Can I still stay beyond September of 2023, or do I need to make any application to the USCIS?
You can stay beyond September 2023.
Even though the I-94 expires
Yes.
in September 2023?
Yes, we know it seems counterintuitive to what we've always emphasized about not overstaying an I-94, but in this situation where the I-94 is just given for a standard 1 year, because CBP, when they admit you using your advance parole, they don't know how long it's going to take until your I-485 is approved. They're admitting you based on your pending I-485, and you're authorized to be in the U.S. until your I-485 is decided. CBP has no idea how long that's going to be, and so they just put kind of a placeholder 1 year period. But past September 2023 or whatever that end date is on that I-94, as long as your I-485 is still pending, even if you no longer have any H or L I-797 that's still valid, you are still in a period of authorized stay.
Let's say I have an I-94 H-1B approval until September of 2024, and I come back in September of 2022 on advance parole, and my I-94 expires. The online I-94 expires in September of 2023, but I-797 for H-1B expires in September 2024. Do I need to inform the employer that I have now moved to EAD or H-1B? Do I need to change the I-9 requirements?
No, not really. You are not required to proactively go to your employer and present your EAD as the new basis of your work authorization. In your own mind, you can kind of know that you are now using your EAD as your work authorization, but legally, it's your employer that is just supposed to approach you for a new form of I-9 verification when the current document they have on file is getting ready to expire. So they're only supposed to come and check with you when the H-1B, which I think we said expires in September 2024, is getting ready to expire and they need to do a renewal. You can inform them at that point that you have an EAD and that an H-1B extension is not needed, but you're not required to do so before then.
So Rebecca, let's ask you one more time. You're telling me that when I come back in advance parole, I can extend the H-1B, I can transfer the H-1B, I can move to the H-4, I don't have to update the I-9 form. Yet, according to the memo that you're speaking of, the USCIS, you're not clear whether I'm an H-1B or in adjustment of status.
Yeah, it is a little unclear. It's sort of a gray area because when you are coming into the U.S., between the time that you have first entered the U.S. using your advance parole until you do have an H-1B extension approved or, a transfer approved or an H-4 filed for you, what is your status in that kind of interim period? From the memo, we know that you can extend your H-1B. You can change status, you can transfer H-1B employers. That seems to indicate that the government thinks that you are
on H-1B.
It seems like
it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, eats like a duck, gives egg like a duck. I believe it's a duck. That's H-1B according to me. Now, what if the situation where the person has traveled on advance parole, the spouse doesn't have an adjustment of status EAD. They are on H-4 EAD. What about that? Can they work? Because the memo says this person can extend the H-1B, transfer the H-1B, and change to a different non-immigrant visa status, though.
Yeah, so that is a good question. I don't think we have an absolutely clear answer on that because, as we've been saying, you can extend your H-1B, change status, transfer to another H-1B employer, but until you take one of those actions, are you still in H-1B status from the time you came in, and therefore is the H-4 still valid? Is the H-4 EAD still valid? We don't
have an answer at all.
Yeah.
But we have not seen anything where USCIS is telling that they cannot work on H-4 EAD either.
No
clearance. And what if the situation is that I travel on advance parole, I come back, I'm in adjustment of status EB3, and now I want to refile the entire 485 application for my family. Can I file right now, or should I do any action to file the 485 before?
Yeah, so if you are planning to file a brand new I-485 application, then you should be definitely in another valid non-immigrant status, H or L or something similar. And there are a couple of ways to kind of make sure you are back in a non-immigrant status. One way is to travel, to exit the country, come back in using
You mean to say going to
H4L.
Mexico, Margarita switch, and then come back? And even though I have used an advance parole, I can still use the 797
Yes.
with the I-94 attached to it and travel to Mexico and come back?
Yep, as long as you're still working for that company. So by automatic revalidation, which we've discussed a lot here, that would, if your I-797 with the I-94 attachment is not expired, that would be probably the easiest and quickest way to get back into H-1B status.
We're going to give a link to it at the bottom of this video. What is automatic revalidation, guys? You can watch that. Now, what about Rebecca? For the people, can they, when the advance parole is pending, though, when the advance parole is pending, though, can they travel outside the country? And what will happen to the advance parole, though?
Yeah, so there is still, I believe, technically an official policy that if an applicant of an I-131 application departs the U.S. while it's pending, that I-131 application can be denied due to abandonment. This is a policy that came up during the Trump administration and was happening pretty routinely, I would say, in 2018 through 2020. We have heard of cases, though, in the past couple of years where people have departed while their I-131 was pending and the advance parole was still approved. So we weren't sure if there was actually a change in policy or if it is just happening here and there, that it's not always being
but sometimes
denied.
they're approving it, sometimes they're not.
Exactly.
Approving. What do you do? What do you tell the client if they departed the country, advance parole is approved, can they travel on it?
We would not recommend using an advance parole that was approved while you were outside the U.S. So we have seen this come up a couple of times where, and it's tempting to use an advance parole if you're outside the U.S. You had to travel maybe while the I-131 was pending. You went for visa stamping, you're waiting for your appointment, and then you hear that your I-131 is approved and someone in the U.S. is going to ship you your EAD AP card. It's very tempting to use that to just come back to the U.S. quickly, but we would definitely caution against doing that if the advance parole was approved at a time when you were outside the U.S. The reason for that is we have seen USCIS field offices issue a couple of RFEs on the I-485 application, basically where they said that the applicant seems to have abandoned the I-485 because the I-131 was still pending at the time they departed the U.S. So it seems like even though the advance parole might be approved when you are outside the U.S., USCIS considers it approved maybe erroneously, and so we wouldn't recommend using an advance parole that's approved at a time when you are outside the U.S. Still try to come back in H or L status, or whatever non-immigrant status that you were planning to return in. And then once you do come back into the U.S., even if you haven't heard anything on the I-131, you haven't gotten a denial notice, you haven't gotten an approval notice, we still recommend refiling the I-131 once you are back in the country, because we know it could be denied. So just go ahead and refile it so that you don't waste another few months of processing time.
So I have my advance parole and adjustment of status pending, Rebecca. And if my I-131 gets denied because I travel and come back on H-1B or H-4 or L1, L2, will anything bad happen to my 485 or EAD?
No, as long as at the time you departed you were in valid H or L status, and the time you came back you were in valid H or L status, that won't affect your I-485.
Nowadays, USCIS is only approving EAD. They're not approving advanced paroling at that point of time. Mm-hmm. Can I use the EAD to travel and come back? Do I have to wait for the advanced parole? How do I know that my EAD is advanced parole and EAD?
Yeah, so be very careful. The card can only be used for travel, for an advanced parole, if it says at the bottom of the card, I-512L, advanced parole. So if it's a combo card, then it will be the size of an EAD card with your photo, but at the bottom it will say I-512L, advanced parole. Only if it's notated with that can you use it as an advanced parole document. If you received only an EAD card without that notation at the bottom, then that means that card is only good for work authorization. You can't use it to travel. And if your I-131 is still pending, it can still continue processing, but then when the I-131 gets approved separately on its own, the advanced parole document that you receive will be like a full page. It looks more like an I-797 approval notice. It's on that kind of thicker paper,
with
a full page with a photo. Yeah.
And we have had people where people just got an EAD. They thought the advance parole is approved. They went back. They went to their home country. When they're trying to come back, oops, they can't come back. So they're definitely 485 was in big trouble. So be careful. Please watch, as Rebecca has pointed out, whether your EAD has an advance parole or not. Anything else, Rebecca, before we depart?
No, I think that's all.
Thank you very much for tuning.